It may not even work.
Sounds good.
All right. I believe we're live. Oh, look at that. It's firing up. I think we got it working. Can anyone hear me out there in YouTube land?
Yes.
Here with Drew and Dragons.
Turn my.
Drew and Dragons was kind enough to join me to test this out, this call-in setup. John Haney's already in the chat. How's it going, John? I'm here today, only here until 1:28 though. 9th grade literature students invade my room at that time. Yes, sir, Robert says. And Robert H says, yo, hey, can you guys hear me okay? And does the volume sound loud enough? And as usual. Eric Wells is in the house. Hey, Eric, how's it going? Leslie's here. Hey, Leslie. Herminator. Heck yeah. How's it going, Herminator? All right. I think we're rolling. I think this is a good thing. So if anyone wants to call in, feel free to volume is good. Awesome. Heck yeah. Look at that. We're actually getting somewhere. Actually getting somewhere. Everyone say hi to Drew and Dragons, who's kind enough to help me test out this live, this call-in business. If anyone wants to join us, I guess it's like a party. You can find the link in the GM Philosophers YouTube on Discord. You can jump in there. Am I brave enough to post the join link in the chat?
I see it. Oh, in the YouTube chat.
Yeah, the YouTube chat. Maybe, I don't know.
I wonder how many viewers you have.
Today's the day. If we're gonna do it, I'm gonna post it in there. All right, here we go. Got to post the invite link. Maybe I'll do it. I don't know any different. All right, I'm posting. Join the chat. Just nobody join and try to, don't say anything that violates YouTube terms of service. I think you can. Suddenly the internet crashes. Uh-oh, Alan, does that mean your internet or my internet? I don't think my internet crashed. I think I'm still here.
He might be kibitzing with us about the potential. That's what he's saying, maybe. But
maybe so. All right, here we go. Pinned message. You can feel free to join the chat. We'll see what goes on. Join and let's talk about something. The internet. Yes. I hope the internet doesn't crash. I would have to really rethink my whole life strategy real quick.
We'd have bigger problems than D&D streams if the whole internet.
Yes, we do. We have much bigger problems than D&D streams.
Yeah,
it's very quickly going to descend into a survival situation. How do I get my cash without the internet?
If I show up to the bank, are licking their lips at that one. So
if I show up to the bank and they're like, "Oh, sorry, we don't have internet. We can't get you your cash right now." I have a feeling that would be a part of it. I don't know. I'm not a banker. All right. Let's see who's all in the chat here. We got Alan here, John Haney's here, Iskandar the Great. How's it going? We've got Awa's Ark in here. How's it going? Herminator says, "Does it work for your phones?" The join link. So I pinned the join link. You should be able to find it in the pinned comments. And I think it should work with a phone, but it's a little untested. I'll be honest. It says I can have up to 10 guests, but I am unsure of exactly how it works. Alan
says, work on my iPad, so
turn it off. It's working on that. Oh, that's a good sign, actually. It must work on mobile to a certain point then. JW's in here. How's it going, JW? JW is one of the contributors who's going to start creating videos for the GM Philosophy channel, which I'm very excited about. We've got a couple different ones coming up. Stealing the Spotlight, the Rogue Lady, her next video gets posted tomorrow night, which is really awesome. Iskandar the Great says 10. Yes. It said I can have up to 10. Not that I would always want to have that many. All right, here we go. We got Dave's Imaginations. Yeah, heck yeah. That looks pretty good.
Am I on? Am I really in the video?
I think you're on. Yeah, I think you're on. You're on. How's it going, Dave?
Wow. Hey, good. Yeah.
Heck yeah. What do you want to talk about? We should.
We're testing. Well, I'm wearing a GaryCon t-shirt.
We can hear you.
There's a lag, so I'm a little thrown off. So I'm wearing a GaryCon t-shirt. A question I would have: GaryCon's coming up next month. Who's going to conventions? What conventions are you going to this year?
That's a really good question. I have not yet started looking into conventions. I need to book some. I've been a little I would say not prioritizing that, but I want to do it. I can do it. It's just a matter of taking the time to look into it and to arrange travel and and like showing up. Um, we have a local con called OzCon, like in the Springfield Branson area. So I plan to go to that one. I think. And aside from that, I don't know. I might just kind of look at one semi close to my geographic area and like go to like, I don't know, just like pick 5 of them, like the 5 closest ones. But anyway, where is Gary Con?
Lake Geneva, Wisconsin.
Nice,
Ooh-wee.
nice.
And I'm in central Illinois, so it's a good, I don't know, 3-hour plus drive up there. But
Okay.
I go up there with another guy and spend the weekend.
Well, enjoy. Yeah, I'm not. I haven't really gone to many. I've wanted to go to some, but never made the trip. How long have you been playing D&D though, Dave?
Wow.
Or
well,
tabletop role playing games? It might
right,
be just for
right.
that.
So as you can see, my wife's sneaking out in the back.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Let's see. I got back into it like so many people with 5th edition. I fancy myself an athlete. I played league volleyball for 15 plus years. And then when my body stopped working, I looked for a new hobby. And first I turned to Warhammer, and it was fine. I really enjoyed building the models and all that. But I found that I really enjoyed the role play part of it. And there's not that much to Warhammer, at least not in the miniatures part of the game. And this goes back to the comment I made the other day. It's really easy to find players to play with. It's really hard to find players you want to play with. At least it was for me. And so from there, I pivoted to that same game store had a Wednesday night 5th edition come and play game. And we went from 1 table to 3 tables in a matter of 3 months, 6 months. And from there, I just handpicked the ones I wanted to play with, and I started a home game. And so that was, what was that, 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. And so I've been mostly forever DM ever since.
Nice.
That is nice. Are you playing 2024? Have you upgraded to 2024?
I challenged my players. So back in 2016, I had a family game with my wife's sister and husband and 2 nephews, really sharp kids. And so that was a group. And then I brought in friends to my friend group. And so I had 2 games going. And so those are kind of the family group. The kids got older, that kind of dissolved away, but I kept my brother-in-law. He still plays. He's in my friend group game. And so that friend group. So yes, I'm slowly evolving the 2024 rules, right? Because I have to know them and I have to enforce them. And so I'm doing that. I do have the 2025 monster manual, and I converted my game tonight. I will be using 2025 monsters instead of 2024 monsters. Supposedly they're harder, but I don't know. For me, does it really matter? Because I'm tweaking stuff as I go all along, all the time anyway. The damage, that's too much, and we'll back that off a little bit. It's just on the fly. So yeah, I'll be using. We will evolve into the 2024 rule set. I like you. I am so in bed with D&D Beyond, as are my players. Right? It's so much easier for them. They all have their tablets or phones or whatever with the characters, and for them to know a rule, look at what their options, just click, it's right there. So yeah, we're all into that.
It does make it really easy. It's so easy to create a character on D&D Beyond as opposed to a pen or pencil and paper, especially for new players. Like a new player will open the book and it's actually kind of complicated, really, honestly. Like unless you've done it before, it's actually kind of complicated. Whereas anyone can jump in D&D Beyond and you really can't get it wrong. It's just like go down, click on box, open box. And I don't know. I kind of am really sold. Now I help my new players create their character sheets even in person on D&D Beyond. We create it there and then we print it out. The only downside to it is that you very quickly realize you want to buy all the source material.
And well, no, I would say I have, but there's a reality now that they've started splitting off into third-party products. I haven't bought all that. But all the core stuff I've absolutely bought through all the years. I'm blessed, right? I've had a good job. Actually, I just retired in December from a 30-year career.
Congratulations.
So here I'm finding myself a lot of extra free time, and this is one of the things I can plug into. That's fun. So I'm blessed to have the finances to be able to do some of that. I know not everyone can. Not all my players can. That's another thing I love about D&D Beyond. You join my campaign, they have access to my stuff. So that's pretty nice. However, it's still, I just spent last week, I was converted one. I said, what was it, 6 months ago, August, September, when the stuff was coming out. Hey, I encourage you to create 2024 characters. However, you don't have to, but all of them have evolved. And the one lone guy left over. Hey, Dave, convert because I'm the Dutch Master, right? I can take leniencies for stats and stuff here and there. And yeah, he was pretty happy.
Nice. We had like a party when that came out, and we all got together and we spent a whole 2 hours of a session just updating all the player characters to 2024. And some of the players also reimagined their characters. Like I had one character who was playing a 2014 fighter, and he ended up switching it to a warlock. So it was pretty fun, and it was also fun to jump in and get the experience creating the characters. So we were pretty excited about it, took it pretty seriously. With that being said, you can still play 2014 player characters in 2024. To me, there's no issue with that, other than I think that the 2024 characters and the classes are actually really cool. I think the way that they did subclasses especially makes it really fun to homebrew, and I think that they make it really fun to play, but you can still totally play 2014 with it.
Sure. Yeah. And then I'll still be playing old products, right? Actually, I'm doing my first homebrew. I'm homebrew by Faerun. So, nice. But we just got done with Horde of Dragon Queen. We played Avernus before that. We do a lot of the out of the box stuff.
Nice. So one thing that I think is fun, I've seen a lot of people taking older adventures, from AD&D even, or even third edition, and they update them to 2024 or, to basically D&D 5e, which I think is really cool. I have so many third edition books. I have probably 12 different third edition books. Oh, heck yeah. Yes. I think that's super cool, especially since, the things like the maps are super cool. And then some of the NPCs are really cool. And then you can basically tweak the stats. And I kind of believe that is probably underappreciated work, the GMs who do that, because there's such a backlog of awesome adventures. You can even go online and find so many awesome one shots from back in the day, AD&D and third edition and stuff like that I would say are kind of just sitting unappreciated now for the most part. So that's an endless stream of cool content that I think is honestly underused. It's probably underused. But also people like to create their own stuff. Do you find that you would rather homebrew your own stuff than use published stuff? I feel like that's a trend that's becoming more popular, is homebrewing your own stuff.
I generally, in the past, I've used the out of the box stuff, and then I tweak the heck out of it, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll throw in, matter of fact, this Isle of Dread I was just showing you, I'm going to throw an Eye of Moloch adventure as the center island instead of what the thing they have, because my campaign is going to want that gem, the classic picture of them going and pulling that gem. Well, we're going to do that. They're all working. They all still have jobs, so no risk. but yeah, that's kind of where we're headed.
We have a good question. Yeah. We have a good question in here that I feel in the chat on YouTube from Robert H. Assuming most GMs are good role players, what do y'all think makes it hard for some players to really vibe with or pick up? And then they kind of added, and possibly what could we do to be better stewards? And I figured I would address that, not to cut across it. But I think one of the cool things, I typically take from the books and then use that as inspiration, and I'll tweak it. For instance, I'm using the new 2024 DMG Sphere of Annihilation. I run a level 15 campaign currently. And so I took that and I made it a water themed Sphere of Annihilation that they can do things like that. So I typically take that and I love to tweak it to, kind of use it as inspiration. For role playing, I think that making sure that you as the DM are letting loose so that they see it's a safe place to let loose is really important to kind of prompt someone and think that they're just going to go deep into character without you showing them first that you're here, that you're meeting them there, is really important. And then better stewards. I think that one of the things, I was on a different Discord server for Theros. I'm a big Theros DM. That's where I play. And, players and making sure that they understand the world and story that you're trying to bring, and just having one-on-one conversations with each player. They had an issue with a PC's bringing somebody to the table. They want to bring this character that has nothing to do with the plot or the lore or the pantheon that they are trying to present in their game. And having the ownership, but also like the ability to communicate one-on-one with players and saying, hey, I love this idea, but it's not going to fit. Is there something else? Or what's the fantasy you're trying to find? But coming to them and having those conversations so that at the table, we're all having a good time and you're not flustered because they have this off the wall character that makes no sense within your world. Because it's their character, but it's our world as the game master. You need to be able to make that bridge with them, and sometimes you have to do more work as the game master. So I'll put that to you two and what that brings, but wanted to address that from Robert.
So I have a question. My guys, they just don't like role playing. When they do, I reward the heck out of them. Now I'm doing voices and I'm trying to get in character all the time. And like I said, my guys have been playing for 10-ish years, evolved over time, but they're not comfortable with it. They don't like doing it. When they do, I reward the heck out of them. But and I'm not going to change that, right? That they've obviously, that's not their thing. It's just the way it is. So.
Yeah. And that's part of the conversation that you had of picking the players that you want to play with then, right? Because sometimes and yours, that's an in-person game. I play online for I use Foundry VTT. But it's making sure up front that they know. And then, if you're the guy that some of my people come, and I've had tables where they just come for me being goofy, and that's the fun. I put all these intrigue things together. And then I realize at the end of the day, they just wanted me to be the goofy satyr, drunk goofy satyr, and that's what they wanted is me to be those things. So, kind of reading the room is a big part of our job, right? On that one, it feels like, and ensuring that everybody's getting what they're looking for at the table. Anyways, continue. I don't know what you have, GM Philosopher, on that.
Yeah, so that's a question I hear a lot is like, how do you get your players to role play more? And here's how I feel about it. I love to role play, and I probably role play enough for everybody, like just role playing the NPCs and stuff. Like I love to do it. And I noticed that some players really also love to do it. And then some players just do not. They're just like, they're just like describing it's almost like they're just describing what their character's doing in third person. And then they'll say the things their character's saying, but like, it's just them speaking, right? They're not like role playing out. So one thing about this is that I love when people role play their characters. Like, it's so much fun for me. The people who don't, like, I try to think to myself, okay, they're not maybe like that into it or whatever, but I do kind of try to coax it out of them. A lot of times if I'm role playing very like seriously with them, I'll be like, saying things and I'll be in voice or whatever. And I'll notice that a lot of times if I really lean into it, these players almost feel like it almost like loosens them up a little bit. Like, it's like I'm so comfortable with it that they just like fall into it. But sometimes I'll also specifically ask them, I'll say something like, describe how your character describe what your character's saying, and not just the words, but I kind of like what are the mannerisms he's using? And I'm wondering, because this NPC is kind of like, they seem a little suspicious. Maybe they're looking to see, if they can trust you or whatever. Like, so it's like a little invitation for them to like role play a little bit. And I've literally had players be like, oh my God, why are you doing this to me? Like, almost in like a joking way. But like, I have also come to be at peace with the fact that some people are role players and some are not. And so I guess I don't like think about it too much at this point. I just really appreciate it when people do voices and role play. Like, I think it's so much fun, and it does add a lot to the game for me. I wish all players would at least try it. But I also understand that it's not everybody's wheelhouse. So there you go. There's my 2 cents. Boom.
It looks like we might have someone else trying to get in.
Oh, we do. Heck yeah. Oh, Herminator's in here. Hey, how's it going, Herminator?
Not too bad.
All right. Heck yeah. We're just talking about players who don't role play. How do you get them to do it? Do you have any advice?
I have a table I'm running through the Lost Mines of Phandelver Shadow, the, eh, the new one,
The Shattered
The-
Obelisk. Yeah.
Shattered Obelisk. There we go. And then I plan to move into Vecna Eve of Ruin. I found a few places on YouTube where they did like redos where it's not quite as written, but it still works. But they're fresh players. Like I took our session 0 was making characters on D&D Beyond, and we made them with 2014, and then when we were able to shift basically between sessions, I took it upon myself because this is the first campaign that any of them have ever played, including my wife. So I transferred their characters over to 24 when it was able to do that. But yeah, they don't know that they can role play. One guy I think did like a one shot, and he likes to interact. I don't know if he necessarily has a voice or would consider it role playing. But I think they're just having fun existing in the world that I've created.
When you say, I don't know that people think they or know that they can role play, I have noticed this. I've noticed a trend where if a lot of times if I play a game with a player who's like new or they don't role play quite as much, I've realized that a lot of times there's a trend where they'll have like a campaign or an arc of a campaign where they won't role play quite as much. And then in the next one, you'll notice that they do it more. So it's like and then they'll go more, and it's kind of like a progression. And I've actually seen some players go from like no role play at all to being quite avid and fun role players, I feel like. But I also feel like that's partly due to the table and like the fact that if there's a lot of role players at the table, then it'll help them with that. I think it helps loosen them up.
Yeah. Like they've never played D&D before, and it's more of a we only play like once a month. Because we're all busy people. One guy's a workers' comp defense lawyer.
Oh wow.
I work 40 to 50 hours a week in a weld shop doing different random things. So we're all busy people. So it's more just a hangout than me, like, oh, I want you guys to role play. It's like I want you guys to have fun. And if you guys have fun by listening to me talk about everything, and not that you run into one player asks like, oh, well, how are you? Do you have any wife and kids? And I blank at the table. I go, and then I have no answer. And then I look up later, they're like magically transformed. I'm like, oh, well, if I would have known that in the moment, I would have responded differently.
Yeah. It's also true that going in the opposite direction, I feel like role playing is very interesting end of the spectrum. And it's like, what's on the other end? I almost feel like combat board gamers are on the other side. So you have some people who think of D&D more as like a minis combat game where they're creating a character sheet, but really they're thinking, oh, what are my combat abilities? What's my range? And then it's all about getting a mini on the hex grid and like moving it around and doing combat. Like there are some people who are really into that aspect of D&D. And then there are some players who are not that into it. In fact, they almost don't really care about the miniature or the piece. They're just like, oh yeah, okay, can I move over here? And for them, it's more about role play. They are not like hyper fixated on things like distance or like radius, whereas you have some really mechanical players who are. I kind of feel like those are like almost different spectrums of it. Like I personally do tend to be kind of a technical player. I enjoy the technical part of combat when I'm in it. But I also want to role play. Like if I had to like focus on one more, it would be the role play. Like that's what I'm actually here for. Like I'd be fine with non-technical combat, but some players are super technical when it comes to the combat. Have you guys noticed that? Do you have any players who are like
coming from Baldur's Gate 3, probably?
Yeah, maybe so. That actually, I've never played Baldur's Gate 3, but that makes sense.
Or Warhammer.
Yeah, the tactics. I have some players where the tactical, oh, this is my kit, this is what I can do, and they don't even, if I don't have a top down, or I use isometric on Foundry VTT. There's also 3D on Foundry VTT.
Oh wow, you're a Foundry guy.
I'm a big Foundry nerd. I'm a big Foundry.
Yeah.
So but that in and of itself is such a huge. We were talking about OBS before and talking about some of that, just the interpersonal time and collateral that it takes to be a game master in a digital format is so high sometimes.
Yeah.
But I have certain people where the tactics are exactly what they want, and they want the big flashy, I run a level 15 campaign right now. And so, but then they turn off, then I have the bard who just use hypnotic pattern and turns off half my mobs, and they all love it. And it's, yay, good for you guys, I guess. But, but the tactics are certainly a big part of it. I'll have ebb and flow of, it's really heavy combat. And then there will be whole sessions where there's no combat. And sometimes I feel, some players will not like that, but the reality is we're all there for different reasons, and so making sure as a game master to have that ebb and flow, whether it's it was a really grindy 3-hour combat because of XYZ reasons, and then the next session is you lean into, well, let's try to engage those players that are more interested in the social dynamics of it. That's us in making sure that we're being good stewards of our tables in that one to try to look at last session as we prep for our next one.
Yeah. And I feel like a blind spot there in both elements. And this is what I try to think about and what I try to get better about is like, for those technical players, if you're not careful, like I used to run a lot of theater of the mind combats, like back in the day, I used to run more of it, and I did less like tactical setting up the board. And real technical players, they will be missing out on a huge part of the game for them if you only run theater of the mind combat. Like it almost ruins that whole part of the experience for them. Whereas if all of your sessions are like a grindy mechanical technical combat, and it's like that's 3 of the 4 hours of your session, those players may love that, but then the role players will be like, oh, I'm actually bored with this. Like this is not so interesting to me. I want to like flirt with the tavern owner, it's like whatever. So I try to be mindful of that too.
But I prefer almost a different type of combat. And this is not what I run, but it's what I prefer. I would like to get to cinematic combat, where if I had my choice, we'd throw away all the player sheets and just play. Tell me what your character wants to do, and let's figure out how he does it. Swing from the chandelier and jump on top of the guy. Oh, that's too many actions. Well, I don't care that. Let's just do it. Yeah. So, but that kind of presses against the very technical aspects of battle in D&D.
That's true. And so cinematic, when you say cinematic combat, I think that it is true that the technical nature of D&D can sometimes distract and take away from that. And if you think about it, like, what if we're directing this like a movie or a show instead of running a minis combat game where you have an action and then you get a bonus action and you can move 30 feet, blah, 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 And so I actually think that those two can be compatible. It takes a lot of like GM paying attention to that and then making players know that that's true. But also it takes being willing to like accept what I guess they call the rule of cool, you want to do that. You want to do that. Yeah, maybe technically you can't technically do it, but I'll allow it because it's awesome. It's like, but you say that you appreciate that as a player. Do you ever run that in your games? Do you ever like try to delve into that?
I encourage it, but my guys, they're more like they're studying their character sheet. Oh, it's okay. I have these 10 things I can do in my action. And actually, that's a reason why I love D&D. I've been playing it for 10 plus years, right?
Yeah.
But I look at these other things where there's less options, and I think less options spurs creativity, right? Because they don't say I can only do those things that are written down in front of me. I have my environment. That's why I try to encourage my players. They don't do it. They look and say, okay, I cast, I don't know, whatever
Fireball.
cantrips. Well, fireball, sure, but the cantrips, right? We get into cantrip war, and because they're scared, they don't want to use up their spells because who knows what's in the next room.
Yeah.
Whereas I want to encourage them to use the environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I totally think that cinematic combat is totally compatible with D&D. But it does take a little out of the box thinking. Like, for example, I one time had this, and I talked about this in a video, and I actually had a lot of people say that they didn't like, they were like, oh, that you shouldn't have done that. Like, it's really interesting. But I had this one situation where there was a halfling and they were having a fight with this monster in the sewer. And they were getting pretty beat up by this monster and had cornered them in the sewer. And the halfling was like, okay, that's it. I'm going to jump right into his mouth. I'm going to try to time it so that I miss his jaws. And I'm going to try to slide down his throat and hold my breath. I'm going to start stabbing him from the inside. Like, this was his idea, right? And it's like, okay, which action does that fall under? But it's like, I don't care. It's like, all right, roll, give me an acrobatics check, see if you can avoid the jaws, as they're trying to bite you. So he goes and does it, right? And then it started this whole situation where he was in the monster and he was like stabbing it, and he had to make con saves because he was trying to hold his breath and he couldn't see. He had to make strength checks just to like move around. But then if he did hit, he was doing double damage because the creature had no natural armor inside. It's like, it was just all vulnerable. So it was like this whole situation. And what ended up happening was he ended up cutting himself out the back of the monster, falling down. It was kind of a funny joke, like came out the monster's butt. And it was kind of a funny thing. But the thing is that, are you taking off Herminator? Oh,
all right, Herman. Thanks, man.
Thanks for joining us. But like, it was the whole thing was that like he did this zany thing, and it's like, I liked it. I think it was awesome. And he might have actually saved the party because it was like a really out of the box idea. Oh, Sloan's jumping in here. Heck yeah.
That makes me, well, I'll jump in. Hey, Sloan, that just to elaborate on that thought, the rules are there to serve us. We are not there to serve the rules as game masters. And so, that moment will probably live long in the mind of your players, much more than some technical truth of I cast a fireball and I killed 30 goblins or whatever, whatever it is that they technically did. So I try really hard to make sure that I use the rules. I try to use them as guidelines, and I there's worlds where I'm like, I don't think that you can do all of that, but I definitely like let my players do that. In Theros, it's such a religion heavy world that, man, they'll just, I got a crit on a religion check from this guy that's the champion of the Forge god, and there's a volcano nearby. He crits on a religion roll saying, help me purge this. And I let the volcano erupt, and he gets 3 9-level spells to cast on this huge area that's covered in infection. Technically speaking, like, I just gave him 3 scrolls that he got to place on the field as if he was being able to control that. The rules are there for us to use, not for us to be bound to them as the game master. So I would empower all the game masters out there to think that way.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think that when we apply those things to combat, you are correct. It does make for the most memorable combats. Like the out of the off the wall stuff is the stuff that people remember. They're not like what she says, like, man, I remember that one time I lined that lightning bolt up just perfectly to get all 13 kobolds. Like that is cool, but it's like, what about, like, I had this one situation where a character used shocking grasp to try to jumpstart a dead transplanar transportation machine. Like, it was a machine that could travel between planes, but they jumped in it to escape the big bad because he was chasing them. And then they're like, basically the equivalent of the keys aren't in it. What are we gonna do? It's like, and he was actually polymorphed into a mind flayer at the time, which is like kind of a zany thing. But he's like, I'm gonna stick my tentacles into the insert, and then I'm gonna shocking grasp myself to try to start it. And it's like, okay, we need to make about 3 different rolls. Let's see if it works, And then they did end up starting it, but they ended up like going somewhere unexpected because they didn't know how to control it because it was all the controls were in Illithid. But anyway, like, that's the time. Like, that one shocking grasp was way more memorable than like 30 different lightning bolts I've seen cast, in the games.
So I have kind of a running thought or philosophy on this, and a lot of people talk rule of cool, which I think is useful as an ideal, but if we get too far away from the structure, then we kind of wind up just telling stories without any. So I most run what I call of like the rule of mess around and find out. You are allowed to ask to get out of any kind of action economy base. If you want to try something that takes more actions, anything like that, I just always make sure that there is a risk and reward. So if you want to run up and slide across the bar while you attack someone and then land on the other side, we can try that. You're going to roll like an athletics check. And if you pass that, then I'm going to give you advantage on that attack. And if you fail that, then you have disadvantage, and coming off the other side isn't going to be graceful. You're going to hit the ground. So I think it's important to keep like some sort of structure, but just not hold 5e's action economy as sacred. Just break it as you play is generally how I run.
Love it. Couldn't agree more.
That's actually a really cool idea. So it's like you can try anything. Here's the risk. Here's the reward. If you fail the check, which may be harder depending on how difficult it is, are you willing to take the risk? I like that. That's a super awesome way to actually that's an awesome way to concisely summarize almost like a rule in itself, like with a rule with a creative.
Without Jeopardy, there isn't much there. And like you said, without structure, there isn't much there either. And so, again, the structure's there. We want to keep, there's only so much you could do within 6 seconds, but we're here to live in escape reality in that way. But also I'm one of those people like, well, what's the temperature of melting gold and stuff? We get into these weird, crazy scenarios where we want to escape to a place that we can believe. And so I totally agree with your point, Sloan.
Yeah. But then there's also I'm going to ask you guys this because I want to know how you feel about it. When you do things like that, I mean, sometimes players ask for things that just don't make sense or can't be done. And then there's almost a reinforcement in the game with dice rolls that kind of betray that. I mean, I always start in a session 0 and explain okay, a natural 20 is a natural 20. It is the greatest outcome, but it's not an infinite loop to do anything. If your player can't fly, you can natural 20 all day. You might hang out in the air a little longer. You might Looney Tunes it, but you're not going to fly. And when we break down kind of how we run the games in those theories, that can affect all of our in-game dissertation about how we're dealing with action economy and dealing with innovation from the players. And I think that's really important to lock down. How do you guys generally deal with when a player they just want to do something that can't be done or doesn't make sense?
So what I always try to do is I try to think first of all, it's draw the line at possible and impossible, right? So it's and I give this example a lot. It's the players I want to go up and I want to lift the house up and throw it at the enemy. It's okay. If you have a strength of, 18, 19, 20, this isn't going to be possible. What's a common sense thing that's probably going to happen instead? Even if you succeed. So it's okay, you go to jam your fingers underneath the house, roll me a strength check just to try to get them in there. And if they do, it's okay, now roll the strength check, try to lift the house. And maybe they lift it. And maybe if they do really, really well, I describe how they maybe start crumpling the foundation and pulling that side of it out or something. It's as it turns out, you realize this house is not liftable. The physics aren't really working. You don't have the strength. But here's what does happen. You yank that part of the foundation out. You have a big hunk of rock in your arms now, right? So it's I try to just think of okay, if they're doing it and they are being successful, then what does that actually mean? And how far does it go? That's kind of how I try to gauge it. It's almost on a spectrum. And then if they roll a nat 20, it's okay, well, you can still only succeed so much. But then there's a question of well, to what point is this becoming supernatural? So maybe I'll say, you know what, roll me another. Let's just see, hypothetically, if you get 2 nat 20s in a row, and maybe they roll. If they roll anything else, it's okay, no, we know this is a normal critical success. If they roll another one, it's maybe there's something deeper at work here. You know what? Roll another one for me. And so that's a way that I kind of gauge, are the dice trying to tell me that there's something extra supernatural going on? And if so, what is it? Maybe he's being empowered by some unseen force and he can lift the house, and 3 nat 20s would tell me that, right? But 2 of them just tell me he's really strong and he's very good at this, but it's probably not going to be a success, right? Anyway, so bam, that's my two thoughts.
So really quick,
Hey,
I'm
Alex.
about to jump off too. So this is a good segue, and I'll let Alex introduce himself. I think that's like a no but situation. It's like, no, I don't think that you can lift up the whole house, but maybe they grab the corner and they punch their fist through and they're able to grab one of the pieces of the foundation and smash it into them, and that's within our reality of reason. And then the house crumbles beneath them and they get like a quarter or a third or whatever of what he was imagining. It's just a no but, and we have to usher them towards what we think is the reality. But everybody, thank you for the time. GM Philosopher, love this. Everybody make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care, guys.
Thank you. See you guys on the next one. All right, Alex is jumping in here, I believe, to talk about playing different races. Is that what you said, Alex? Like
yeah. Hi.
Go for it.
What's up, my American friends from the UK? Hi. I was fascinated because I saw you the last live you kind of touched on role playing, and I was interested. I had this conversation with a friend because I know that there could be there's lots of discourse around how people role play certain characters. I think even like Professor Dungeon Master from the Dungeon Craft, what was it called? Is that what the YouTube channel is called? He was mentioning how people sort of roleplay orcs and how like orcs tend to have these characteristics, and then the way that people roleplay them now is kind of like an elf that's like a green elf, right, or something. And I find it interesting because naturally you would attribute certain traits to a species or race or whatever. Say like an elf is they live 1,000 years or something, or a halfling only lives a certain amount of years and they have a particular experience. And I know that role playing does require it is kind of a skill, but I'm interested in like if you are able to assign yourself to a character or a fantasy, wouldn't it be like really cool if you are able to sync yourself as much as possible, and I imagine that's fun for some people, but also I know that some people probably just want to play themselves with a particular stat block, you know what I mean? So they want to play a halfling, they just kind of want the aesthetics of a halfling, but they're not really role playing as a halfling. What do you prefer in your games? You know what I mean? Like for me it's a lot deeper. I love to sink into it. If I'm playing an elf, I'm living for 1,000 years, and that's how my character's gonna think, and they'll act accordingly. But that's not always the case because a lot of people, they'll play an elf and they're really just playing a human with pointy ears.
I think it depends on the player. I think if the player likes to really get into the role play and the character, then great. I love that myself. That to me personally, let's write backstory. Let's create some plot based off of your backstory. Let's bring in your previous, whatever comes from your species now, and bring all of that in. I love to do that. But sometimes every now and then you get a player who just, like you said, Alex, just wants to stat block, and they don't really care. They just said a halfling looks cool, I'm playing a halfling. And if they want to do that too, but they're having fun, ultimately, if everybody's having fun, I'm like, well, we'll meet you at where you're at.
Yeah, I actually agree. I think there's a little responsibility with the DM as well, though, to incorporate this so that it makes sense. Because in the same point, you could have two people that want to play an elf, and one wants to be very regal, and I have lived 800 years and I'm going to act a certain way, while the other person kind of just likes the idea of the skin, right? So in a session 0 or character building, it's why I like to run a lot of homebrew, but also leave a lot of wide empty space in the world. Because if this character wants to have a history, cultural background that affects their play, and this player wants to play the same thing but doesn't, well, I am now going to encourage as well as work with them to create two different cultures. You are from a high elven, pure elven city who have these back ideas and have these kind of cultural influences, and you come from this other side, and you're both going to help me develop each side of it. And yours is just a multicultural area, and your elf acts like everybody else because everybody's integrated there. And then we can then use that to continue world building, so that not only do the players get kind of the RP that they want, and it is the character that it wants, but it also bleeds and makes sense in the world. And then their character backstories can kind of, you can see that derision in their RP, because they can then talk about their backgrounds and the differences and the different assumptions they would have about each other.
I think those are really good ideas. I prefer deep role play. Like, I love deep role players. I have such I have such gratitude for role players who go in depth with their characters. But it's also true that sometimes, and I think it's especially true of newer players. They don't just maybe have the experience or even the understanding of like going that deep with it. And so to them, it is very much like, oh, half elf is cool, I'll do that. Oh, what's a sorcerer? Let's do that. But then I think it's a good opportunity also to give them clues. So for example, it's like, I might say to the half elf character, you walk into the tavern and you're instantly a little bit self-conscious. You realize this tavern is full of humans and dwarves. There is not a pointy ear among these people. And you suddenly see, you feel eyes on you, realizing you're kind of an outsider. And this makes you kind of think about your, growing up at your mother's in the summer with the elves. And then of course your father, the rugged sailor, that was a different upbringing. Right. So, and I kind of feel like as GMs, kind of Sloan, I think said a really good thing was we have some responsibility for it too. And I think that's a great time to like, for example, if someone is playing an 800-year-old elf, as a GM, you have a lot of power to say something like, so your character has been around a long time. You've seen things like this, blah, blah, blah. You've seen monsters like this, blah, blah, blah. So it's like you can really lay into it and give them that feeling of like, oh, I am 800 years old, aren't I? Wow, this is kind of cool. Like I didn't even think about myself that way, but it's true. And I think that can make a very meaningful impact on players and on the experience.
For sure, man. I like that. I think what you mentioned really reminded me. There's another guy that I follow. I forget his name. I think he's a director or something. I followed him around the same time I started following you.
Mystic Arts?
And he mentioned who?
Mystic Arts?
Yeah, Mr. Cox. Yeah, that guy.
I watched his videos.
He's great, huh?
Yeah.
He mentioned one of the coolest things, like tips I'd seen, which is like rendering. And so rather than sort of describing a room or like info dumping or expositioning, you every time they say they do an action, you sort of like mention a little detail afterwards, and it kind of draws them in. I'm like, man, that's so cool. So you're like, oh, I asked the barkeep for a glass of water, and you say, and the barkeep pours a glass of water, he slides it over a smooth table, it looks like it was made of rich mahogany or something, just a little tidbit to sort of render the thing. And that what you said reminded me of that, because it sort of draws you in further to be like, oh, also, yeah, you don't recognize this place based on where you're from or based on your certain age, and you kind of add these little pieces of information that kind of excites the mind, like, oh yeah, I am an elf, I am going to live for 1,000 years. That's really cool. And I think that really coincides with what Sloan was saying in terms of like sort of meeting them halfway as the GM, allowing them to sort of draw them into it, right? Rather than sort of expecting a certain type of play, like having someone sort of go into that, like get more and more excited about getting deeper into their character, whatever it may be. I think is really the way to go about it. Like as a GM, I think that's pretty cool.
I think there's go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say it's also true, and you touched on another very true thing is when you point those things out to players, it makes the game more exciting for them, and it makes them think like, oh, that's like special. Like it creates a little emotional impact, I think, when you point out some of those things to players that have to do with their character specifically, that make their character kind of special. Like seeing the world as an 800-year-old elf and pointing it out is kind of a special thing. Just like it would be special to see the world as a 3-foot hobbit. These big folk, they're always missing the little details on the ground. They don't look down enough. So it's like pointing out those little things can also be a fun way to make players feel more important. But anyway, go ahead, JW. Go for it.
Just going to say that always works really well. Something that I just absolutely love to do is to work with players when they're building a new character, to really work with them and help them and help them develop their backstories. I love to do that. immensely. And I find that making it a cooperative thing, like they get, it's their agency, it's their character. What they desire for their character takes precedence over any suggestion that I have, obviously. But being able to help them, for instance, dovetail that backstory into where in the adventure you are, so that they have a motivation to join the party or do whatever, things like that. And that lets you sprinkle in, so many moments role playing wise. It does get the players really engaged because they did all of that build up, but then you can sprinkle in all of that backstory as things as they occur in the scenes and whatnot. You can make a scene straight up spotlight a particular character so that they can really get into it. And I'm loving this new thing because I haven't really thought too much about what Sloan and Josh have brought up, but I really like this that Alex actually brought up initially, this rendering idea. I think that these ideas of really getting in, working with the players on their backstory, and then adding the rendering in on the other side of it, I can see that making a very immersive experience for a player.
Yeah. And I love the idea of the rendering in terms of like, what are we going to draw attention to? Like, what are the most important things to focus on? If we get too in depth with every little thing, we won't ever accomplish any story, but we do want to stop sometimes and be like, let's focus in. So what is the item? And then, or what's the item or the scene? And as the GM, we have a lot of power to dictate kind of like what the players draw their close attention to. And so that word rendering, I think, is a very good word. And it's a very cool tool to use to build more immersion, in my opinion.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I think that I have to get back to work. Thank you all for joining me. This was very successful. Did you guys like this format? Do you think this is a fun, like the call-in format? Do you guys like this? Oh, Gobi's jumping in. We gotta say hi to Gobi.
Oh, I feel so bad. No, that's okay.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Joined, and then I heard, I gotta go, and I was like, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Gobi, we'll get your opinion. Do you like the call-in format? We're experimenting with the call-in format. What do you think?
I do. I really enjoy it. I loved hearing other voices. I'm actually currently technically at like work right now, but I'm having background noise when I'm doing that, and especially hearing so many voices on like active subjects instead of like planned interviews and things like that. It was really nice to have going on. I was tempted to join when I first got here, and I was like, oh, I'm in pajamas, and you're like, but why not? So.
It's great to put faces to names too, and personalities.
Yeah. It's also amazing how I know so many people from in the chat, but then I've never seen faces, and I just assumed they looked a certain way. Like John Haney, because of his thumbnail, I always just pictured him as a zombie with a guitar. I don't know why. But then he like gets on the screen. He's like this distinguished looking dude with a beard and a mustache. I'm like, oh, you're not a zombie. Totally thought you were a zombie.
One of my longest followers was this. They had a male profile, male name, like they were like Slayer something on Twitch for years. For years, I thought this was a dude, and then I got into a call with them one time, and they're just this petite, nicest little girl, and they were just like, "Hey, it's so nice to finally talk to you." I was like, "What? It's been years."
Online world be weird like that. It'd be weird like that.
This is a good format, man. I dig it. I think I noticed this with a lot of new Dungeons and Dragons channels. It's like a weird side of YouTube that I didn't, because usually it's very performative. Lately, I'm seeing a lot of communion between the channels and people sort of reaching out to each other and being like making acquaintances and stuff. It seems very like it's like a different app almost. It's pretty cool. And like this is kind of one of those things. I'm like, yeah, I like it.
Yeah,
I like
it
it
is.
a lot.
And it's about gathering the collective wisdom of the chat, which I always say, but this is much more high def than just me reading the comments. It's much more high def, much better. All right, I think that we're going to wrap it up. Someone close us out with a final word of wisdom. We need a final word of wisdom here. Who wants to do it?
I just popped in. I will say, whatever your players want to do, find a way to make something possible with that creativity to always encourage your growth.
There you go.
Boom. Very wise. I like it. All right. Thank you all so much for joining me. I really appreciate all of you. I'll be back here tomorrow. Is today Thursday? Yeah, today's Thursday.
Yeah.
All right. I'll be back tomorrow for another Coffee Break Live, and we'll probably do another call-in episode, which I'm thinking is super awesome right now. So shabam. And then, we'll just keep on keeping on. Oh, and then Saturday morning, we're doing a special episode where John Haney and I are going to be hosting a conversation about defining good and evil in the context of a TTRPG. We're going to get a little moral and deep with it. So it's going to be a very, very fun conversation. We're going to be accepting call-ins on that. I have to publish that in the channel, but I was waiting to make sure the tech was working first. I want to make sure I could technically accomplish it. So
What's your target time frame?
That is going to be in the earlier morning on Saturday. I'm thinking it's going to be I'm thinking it's going to be around 10 a.m. Central Standard Time, but I'm not 100% sure because I also have a couple things that day that I have to kind of squeeze it around. So we're going to see what we can do. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out, and I will see you all later.
Good speaking to you all. Take care.